One of the letters written by the Apostle Paul while he was in prison, written to the ancient city of Colossae. We're going to look at just 3 verses in just a moment. When we look at the theme of new clothes, go ahead and bring that up, Jay. New clothes, looking at the new you. One of the most memorable times of my childhood years was late summer in middle school. It's when I got a chance to get brand new, what we used to call school clothes. Remember that? If you're of an older generation, you just didn't wear the same thing all the time. See, all the guys shaking your heads, smiling. I'm not sure if Brian and Monica or Linda, do you guys ever have school clothes, play clothes? Maybe. Okay, you did. But we had church clothes, school clothes, and play clothes. And if we went to church and went to a friend's house afterwards, we had to bring our play clothes to church with us to switch out from church clothes to play clothes. But school clothes. Once you hit middle school, you're a little more conscious about how you look, and you have an interest in the opposite sex, and you want to look your best, and you want to kind of be styling a little bit more. You didn't care in elementary school. But I remember my mother taking me down to Sun Valley Mall. We lived in Napa. We would drive down to Concord to Sun Valley Mall. That was the mall. And she would let me pick out school clothes. And that was basically a brand new pair of pants and a shirt for every day of the school week. Maybe an extra, but it was definitely 5 pairs, so I wouldn't wear the same thing twice. But she kind of gave me some leeway on picking the style. I wasn't too much into expensive clothes, but I wanted to wear what was popular. And but picking out school clothes because I wanted to be kind of my best self at school. And just the experience of buying new clothes, it's maybe not always fun, but when you're wearing new clothes, you kind of feel different, especially if you're glad to get rid of some old clothes or they wore out or fell apart in some reason. Well, basically, when we look at our Christian life, we made the decision at baptism to get rid of the old clothes. And the old clothes were things that were no longer acceptable to God. They never were acceptable, but we simply agreed with God, yes, they're going to be unacceptable with my new life. And I'm going to put on new clothes. And we're going to see that expression being invoked here in Colossians 3, 12 through 14. And we're going to look at exactly what new clothes look like. With me in middle school, it was a new shirt, it was new pants, probably new shoes. It was everything with my mom. Everything was brand new to represent my new grade advancement. And everything in our life is to be brand new. But sometimes the old clothes don't want to go away. And they don't want to be replaced. But in Christ, they have to be. But what will the new clothes look like? I decided after preaching on this last week that maybe we need to focus in more on what the new clothes look like and how would we know that we're wearing them? Because they're very difficult to put on at times, especially when the old clothes were always more comfortable. And the old ways of doing things in the Christian life are always more comfortable and easy, but they're simply unacceptable and they're kind of destructive. They have holes all in them. We have to put on the new clothes, which may not be as comfortable at the moment, but once we wear them, we radiate the glory of Christ. Let's look now. First of all, we're going to apply the principle that Jesus talked about in Matthew 22. We read this at the very beginning. Remember what Jesus said about the greatest commandments? When he was asked about that by some of the Jewish leaders that were trying to test him, he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And then he said, this is the first and greatest commandment. But then the second is what? Love your neighbor as yourself. What we'll see here in Colossians 3 is the Apostle Paul, by the direction of Jesus Christ and the Spirit of God, spelling out exactly what it looks like to love your neighbor as yourself. So we're applying exactly what Jesus taught, but we're going to get real specific about it because sometimes we can be intentionally vague. Oh, we love everybody. Oh, I just want to love you. Well, what does that mean? What would that look like as you interact with difficult people in your family? What would that look like when you have to deal with people at work that are always difficult? What will that look like? And even your online presence is going to be challenged by loving your neighbor as yourself. Let's go ahead and look at it. Here are the 7 qualities to look at, and we'll walk through Colossians 3, 12 through 14. Let's go ahead and look at 12 through 14 and then Jay bring up the slide of the 7 qualities. Colossians 3, verse 12. Go ahead and look along with me at this text. Paul writes, by the Spirit of God, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves. There's the new clothes connection. Clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. Verse 14, and over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. All right, let's break these down. Here's the 7 character qualities we're to take on. Look at the word that the Apostle Paul used in verse 14. It's kind of an older word. He wrote, over all these virtues, put on love. Virtue is maybe a more sophisticated, a little more older word for simply the word character. Let's talk about simply character for a moment. Character is different than your personality. Character is different than your personality. We're basically born with personalities. Oh, you're so much like your mom, you're so much like your dad. Maybe in the way maybe we're extroverted or we're introverted. We didn't really have to work on that. That's simply kind of the way we are. We might refine it a little bit, and if we're a jokester, tell some better jokes, things like that. But really, we're not looking at our personality. In fact, God does not tell you as a new Christian to change your personality. He doesn't tell an extrovert, hey, you need to become more quiet like an introvert. Nor does he tell an introvert, someone that's really withdrawn more and doesn't like to be out there. He doesn't say, hey, you got to be an extrovert. That's not what God's looking at. You stay yourself essentially in personality. But what God is looking for is your character. These certain virtues or qualities to begin growing the minute you are born again in Christ, and you keep on working these all your life because they're a lifelong challenge. But they are all reflections of what it means to love God because they're important to Him, so you make them important to you. But they're all ways that you love each other. And dealing with other people is your greatest challenge of life. Work, family, people that are part of customer service, people that are literally your neighbors. And when he says love your neighbors yourself, that simply means people around you in your sphere of influence and involvement. Everybody you interact with, people in the grocery store, people in line with you, they're all your neighbors. It's not just people you share a fence with. He's wanting us to treat people as He treats them and even see them as He sees them. So let's look at these 7, the outlines. He says, therefore, as God's chosen people, verse 12, holy, that means set apart, that's our calling, and dearly loved. He says, clothe yourselves, and he first says, with compassion. We're just going to give a few moments to each one of these. What I want to first do is kind of, so we don't just get lost in a vague sense of what compassion is, we'll first look at the opposite of compassion. So at least you know what is completely unacceptable and you got to get rid of to be compassionate, and then go on to look at what it will look like when you are a compassionate person. First of all, compassion. Here's the opposite. The opposite of compassion is not caring at all. You see someone laying on the ground, they've been injured, you just walk right past them because you have a 3:30 appointment. Remember what teaching Jesus gave about people actually doing that? Parable of the Good Samaritan, guy who had been beaten and robbed on the side of the road, and 2 people that should have helped just walked right by on their way to get to their next destination. So Jesus taught that simply not caring is not acceptable. We've got to care about the people that God cares about and not just ignore them or think it's someone else's responsibility or to think, well, they deserved it or I can't do anything. The beginning of loving your neighbor is having a sense of care about them. And if it's for no other reason than God cares about them, that's good enough. You don't have to reach out and hug someone or immediately say, oh, I love you just like my sister. You don't have to do that. Just care about them because God cares about them. And that's the beginning of compassion. Again, things that are not compassion or simply deciding I'm not going to help you at all because I don't like you or you're different than me. Or judging someone, well, you wouldn't have fallen if you were watching where you were walking. Sometimes we get really good at that. And the more you kind of learn life a little bit, it's easy to be more judgmental than compassionate. And I'm really good. In fact, I've got a PhD at explaining why someone had a problem. Because I do it with all my students all the time. But sometimes we're reminded by our principal, a lot of these students have home lives that are excruciating. And many times as a teacher, I learn about exactly how difficult their home life is, and that is why they were late Tuesday morning. Or that's why they didn't bring a pencil, because they're dealing with abusive parents, and they barely got out of the house without being hit. And the fact that they forgot their pencil, maybe I should be a little more compassionate about that. And that's the whole idea there. Instead of trying to explain why someone has a problem, maybe understand that there's a bigger story behind someone's situation. That's the beginning of compassion. Compassion, as you start embracing it, is feeling of sadness. So when someone's stuck on the side of the road, or when someone's fallen, or they are struggling to pay their bills, or maybe they've lashed out in anger when they normally aren't that way, instead of backing away and saying, well, you shouldn't be like that, saying, maybe in your mind, thinking, why are they like that? There's an expression that came across my desk a few years ago as a teacher. Hurt people many times hurt people. They hurt others because they've been hurt, and they're reacting the way they've been treated. And that helped me immensely to stop being so judgmental and holier than thou. And I try to realize the most difficult student in my class, and the way he's talking to me and acting, is probably the way he's seen people treat him or experience that. And that helps me a lot. It helps me tremendously, and I believe that's what Jesus and the Apostle Paul are hitting at as far as compassion. Many times in the Gospels, before Jesus did something for someone, it says he had compassion upon them. But the rest of the crowd was ignoring him. Even his own inner circle would say, hey, don't talk to that person. We have an appointment to get to. But Jesus looked at someone that either had leprosy or had some kind of issue, and he had compassion. He had a sense of concern about them. It's taking meaningful steps to help. You may not be a doctor and you may not be a financial advisor, but you figure out you can do something. Even if it's just an encouraging word, like, I hope you have a better day. When you realize there's not a lot you can do, I hope you have a better day than what you've had so far. And having that spirit and mindset is compassion, and that's what the Apostle Paul calls for. Clothe yourselves with compassion. Number 2, kindness. Well, what is kindness? Well, first of all, what is the opposite of kindness? Well, I wrote down scolding someone. Well, that wouldn't happen to you if this and this, and they're going on some kind of rant to tell someone probably something they know already, they're just having a hard time coming to terms with. Why they have no money at the end of the month. Or why this person doesn't want to talk to them anymore. Or why they're having a hard time getting along with everybody. They probably kind of already know. And if we just scold them and talk to them with a tone that's scolding, you're probably doing the same thing they've done with themselves, and simply making yourself, and I'll make myself, and I've done that to people, there's probably someone they're not going to go to for help because they're hearing the same thing they're being told by others in their own mind. Scolding someone, condemning them, saying, well, you do this again, I'm not talking to you anymore. That's not really kindness. The silent treatment, you didn't hit them with your fist, but you're going to hit them with silence. Just snubbing someone, that's not kindness. You might be not trying to hit them, and that's commendable. But if you just don't talk at all to them or ignore them because you don't want to get involved in their problems, that's not really being kind. We see Jesus in the Gospels all the time intervening in situations where no one else wanted to intervene. And the regular people saw him as someone that cared about them first and then could do something about their problems. So we're trying to take Jesus' character qualities into our own life. Trying to refrain from the words, "I told you so." Or, "I told you 12 years ago this would happen." Yeah, you did. But how many times have we done things that we told ourselves we shouldn't do, or I won't do that again, but we did it again? So trying to exercise the same kind of spirit and disposition towards others that we would want shown towards us and that God himself has shown towards us. So the opposite of being unkind would be sympathetic. As with compassion, trying to feel for someone's situation. Trying to have empathetic feelings about them, like, ooh, that must really hurt. And sometimes even if you know why that person's got that problem, yeah, you did this. If they're in the throes of their consequences, sometimes just telling them, hey, I know this really hurts, doesn't it? And you probably didn't want to be in this situation of life. I wouldn't want to either. And that helps immensely. Professional counselors know this. Therapists and counselors know they can't fix someone's problems in 5 45-minute sessions. But they can listen really well. They can look someone in the eye and just say, boy, that hurts. And it does hurt. Even if someone's created all their problems, from chemical abuse to abusive treatment of others, and now they're all by themselves, they still hurt. And I think what Jesus is calling us to here, and Paul is by the Spirit of God, is a sense of empathy for someone's situation, because God empathized with us. These people are dead in their own sins. They're enemies, but yet I still love them. I still care about them, and he's still going to pursue us to forgive us, even though we've done a lot of unlovely things. God's now looking for us to treat others the same way. Kindness can involve simply talking softly to someone. Maybe you get to the point once you've expressed sympathy or empathy that you now say, well, here's what you need to do next. You say it in a good way, such as, hey, let's talk about what we're going to do now. Or what do you think might be some good next steps to deal with this situation? Not say, well, you bear 1, 2, 3. That doesn't work too well. Got to talk to Brian not too long ago about this principle of de-escalation. He works in a situation where he deals with people that have a lot of anger and a lot of frustration, moments where you've got to bring it down and not intensify someone's anger, and speaking softly, lowering your tone, not flying off the handle when others are, not meeting anger with anger, tone for tone. That's all an act of kindness, because you're consciously restricting yourself on what you'd like to say or what you'd like to do, but no, you can't do or shouldn't do. That's what we're being called to, a sense of kindness in our approach of others, which even affects the tone of our voice and how we interact. Number 3, humility. This is a paradox of the Christian life. Many times, the more we get on the right track with our life and we're cleaned up at baptism, sometimes we get a little angry about the way we used to live. Like, I can't believe I lived 15 years doing that. Or I can't believe all my life I used to be that way. And Satan says, okay, I'm going to use your anger at your past life to now be angry at other people that aren't quite there yet. And Christians have the worst reputation at times for exuding a holier-than-thou mentality. And a lot of it's not intentional on the part of Christians, but we're angry because we see someone else doing the same thing we did. And we can sometimes grab people by the spiritual collar and say, what are you doing? Don't you know any better? Well, we didn't know any better at some point, or we were deceived and deluded. And we saw the light, and we came to the light, and we came to the source of forgiveness. But we're still called to a spirit of humility. Earlier in Colossians 1 said God rescued us If you've been rescued by the Coast Guard, you don't brag about your ability to swim and how you saw the buoy, you saw what the ring that was tossed to you and how good you swam towards it. You're thankful for the saving helicopter. You're thankful for the Coast Guard personnel that jumped out of the copter and risked their life to get you. We are a saved, rescued people that don't have a whole lot of room for arrogance or being braggadocious or condemning or scolding or anything. So spirit of humility is something like you've heard before, there but by the grace of God, what? Go I. Sometimes we forget that we were saved not too long ago and that we too were reckless and seared our conscience and things. I know I've done that where you just forget and we get a little arrogant, and that comes across as being holier than thou. But with humility, instead of judging someone's situation, say, why'd you do that? Or you shouldn't have done that, or I told you not to do that. Maybe ask a person a question like, boys, is this what you really want? Is this for your life? And you say that once you've kind of engaged in a conversation, or say, I'd really like to join you in this journey maybe to another place. I can tell this is probably not the best place for you, and it must really hurt to be here. Let's try to walk together to another place in life and go think another way. Something like that, to where, and I've learned with students, just ask them questions about, is this the grade you wanted in class? So tell them, well, you got an F. Just ask them, is this what you're wanting? I find it a lot easier to engage with them, and they'll stay in my office longer if I ask them, like, is this what you wanted? Is this what you were planning for in September? And what can we do about this? What do you think would be some good things to do next to try and maybe turn this around? I've learned this ask questions works a lot better than giving Mr. Mulligan's judgments, and even though I know I'm right, but just asking them and letting them kind of experience some humility and grace for me instead of judgment seems to work a lot better, and that's what Paul is hitting at. A sense of humility. Number 4, gentleness. Well, what's the opposite of gentleness? Being loud, in a condescending way, using our anger to intimidate, or a voice to intimidate, or maybe a strong personality to intimidate. We know we got it. We'll use it to kind of intimidate others from asserting themselves. Being harsh, rough. And you don't have to be a physically violent person. Many people are they're verbally violent. Maybe you sat in a meeting with someone that escalates their voice and they use the tone. They didn't use profanity, but the tone that just kind of scared everybody. Like, oh, we don't want to make them more upset. What Paul is saying here is that gentleness is going to be the opposite. It doesn't mean you take on this mousy voice, well, I don't know, and things like that. But you intentionally decide, I'm going to be gentle with a person, which will involve your tone becoming a lot softer in what you say, but sometimes the softness gives you strength. Speaking more deliberately, say, well, we're not going to do that. That's a firm decision. If you know you need to say no to someone, we're not going to do this, or we're not going to go there. But you're saying it in a way that doesn't make someone else react in a worse way. And that is a spirit of gentleness. It's one of the qualifications for an elder. An elder of the church cannot be someone that's always slapping people around and bossing around people and trying to bring out the best in them by being verbally abusive, but there's someone that is able to say the right thing and say yes when you need to say no, yes, or no when you need to say no, but they do it in a spirit which makes someone likely to follow. That's gentleness. Gentleness sometimes involves, if things are really dicey with someone and you're in a comfortable relationship with them, kind of reaching out and putting your hand on their hand. Sometimes the right appropriate touch at the right time can do more than any words could ever do, because they communicate love and care. And in the right situation, do that. People. Pat on the shoulder, appropriate hug, things like that are all examples of gentleness. Looking someone in the eye when they're talking to you about their painful situation. It's kind of hard to do at times, just keep looking at someone in the eye. I'm going to do that with Janet right now. But just to keep doing that versus looking other ways when they're trying to tell you something big. Just a good, thoughtful look communicates a lot of words. It shows you care because maybe a lot of people haven't ever listened to them. Or people always cut them off or speak over them when they try to talk about their frustrations. But if you just listen, sometimes they just need to vent and get things out. And again, therapists know that. Sometimes a person just has to get out all their stuff. And if you just listen, they're kind of at the beginning of healing. So that's gentleness. Number 5, patience. What's the opposite of patience? What are we trying to get rid of? Being quick-tempered. Quick-tempered. And this sometimes is a personality thing where we're easily provoked. In 1 Corinthians 13, all the attributes of love, Paul said love is not quickly provoked or easily angered. And when you're in a relationship with someone, if they're scared of your first response, you're going to get all angry. That's not a healthy thing. And never take pride in the fact that, well, I call them like I see them, and I just say, I speak my mind right away. Well, maybe in some places, like if you're an auctioneer, speak your mind right away. Or something like that. If you're a coach, football, that might be a good thing, speak your mind right away. But in a marriage, or with children, or with colleagues, just speaking your mind right away when you really haven't thought about what you're going to say and how you say it and who you're saying it to may not be a good thing. So being patient sometimes, especially if you're angry, the best thing you can do is maybe just let things settle on the inside and try to think a little bit about what you're hearing that's making you angry. I think it was in the great movie Bambi, the wise philosopher Thumper. I think he said, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. That doesn't mean you never say anything, but sometimes your first response, if you're being patient, is simply, let me absorb what I'm hearing a little bit more. Let me think about what a person's saying rather than how to respond to them. Many times we speak or we listen to respond, and we're just listening to them halfway because we want to get something in next. But it is hard. It's hard in marriage to do this. It's hard with anyone you're close to really listen because you think you know already what they're saying and you know already what they're about. It's hard, but just listening at least shows you care. And you're not going to say anything you regret later because once those words come out, you can never take them back in. They're there forever. You can apologize for them forever, but you can never get those words back. So patience means settling down, trying to listen. And sometimes if you have to tell someone that you're really frustrated with and they have done something wrong, just say, we need to have a discussion later about this, okay? I'm not in a good place right now to talk about it, but I will be, and sometimes it's 15 minutes later. With me, it might be 3 to 5 business days later till I'm ready to take on a difficult conversation because I don't like difficult conversations. I am conflict avoidant. I'm not patient, I just don't like conflict. But I need to sometimes deal with things I don't want to, but patience keeps it a little more under control. Paul says later here, after patience in verse 13, he says, bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. I believe bearing with one another is connected to that patience. We've all had our bad moments. We've all had our moments where we wish we hadn't done something, we wish we hadn't said something, we wish we hadn't thought something with people that we love or with someone in line at the grocery store where we blurted out something that we felt but shouldn't have been said. What Paul is calling for her is to bear with each other. And I think that part of that is simply bearing with each other's humanity. Now, we're all humans. We're all swimming in the same fishbowl. And we all have our things that frustrate us and things that get to us and things we can't stand. We all have our list of these things. But he's saying here when you bear with each other, that means hang in there a little longer. kind of understand that we're all frustrated. We're all standing here stuck in the line, stuck in traffic. Let's just bring it down a little bit and then forgive each other. He says, if any of you has a grievance against someone. Now, this can involve different things in forgiveness. With sometimes just let it go. If you're someone that's bothered by everything all the time, sometimes we just have to learn not to be so bothered and just let things go. I was told one time about marriage, the most successful marriage is with people that have the shortest memories. If you remember everything your spouse did all the time, you're going to have a miserable time trying to go forward. But sometimes you just have to let it go. If it was just a little blow up you had, it might have really made you mad. You might not have talked for a long time. But eventually just let that go. If it's a serious offense, arrange a time. Hey, we need to talk about it, as painful as that is. Because sometimes things that are said or done aren't going to just blow over. Some things need to blow over. Other things just have to be confronted, and maybe even with a third party, a professional therapist or someone that can just be a buffer. So each party is kind of acting their best. And then get to the point where you forgive each other. Hopefully a person will apologize. If they don't, you might just have to figure out, how am I going to go on with this person, because I can't get rid of them in my life. They're not going away. I might have to figure out how just to deal with them the best way. So it says, forgive also as the Lord forgave you. Did Jesus have any guarantees of how well we would live when he died on the cross? None. And we don't have any guarantees that the person we forgive is going to do any better 15 minutes later, let alone 15 days. But we still forgive. Either by letting it go because it's not worth hanging on to, it's going to make us more upset than anything else, or setting up the arranged time to revisit it in the right setting and seek forgiveness. Many times both people have to seek it. Forgiving because God in Christ forgave you. We're being called to do exactly what Jesus has done for us. And that takes away all our reasons not to try to solve the problem. Forgive not as you've seen your Aunt Jean forgive, which barely at all. He says, forgive as Jesus forgave you. So we're called to a higher standard. Forgive each other. Then finally, verse 14. And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. How does an engine work, Robert? It's got to have all the cylinders firing. You have one off, that engine, it might get down the road, but you're going to be shaking and you're going to be calling Robert, hey, my car's not running right. These are things that, you don't say, I'm going to work on compassion for the next 10 years, and then I'll try to take on kindness for another 5. These are all things we're working on all the time. But love is the great cover of them all. We're simply showing love to other people because we've been shown love by our great God. Notice what's not said here. It doesn't say you have to find them a loving person to love. He doesn't say here you have to feel good about everything. He doesn't say someone has to give you a Hallmark card for showing kindness. You don't have to. You just do it because God has done it for you. And sometimes that may be all you have with a difficult person at work. Or a neighbor that you've had loud music problems with for 10 years. You're not going to have any internal motivation to love them. You're not going to feel anything. All you're going to have is, let me love you, as Nathaniel led the song today, let me love you with the love of the Lord. You don't have to feel a thing. Just do it. Talk to someone the right way. If you can't think of anything to say, just be silent and listen. And just try to be self-controlled. Arrange other times to deal with it. Whatever it is, whenever you're doing those things, you're loving someone with the love of the Lord. Jesus on the cross never said, hey, this feels great. I love this. And it was the most excruciating thing ever for him to die for us. But when it says, forgive each other as the Lord has forgiven you, your feelings don't have to be there. just your actions. Again, your mind, when you're deciding not to think a certain way, that's your action, and not using that against someone. So instead of hating someone, instead of physical and emotional outburst or words of destructiveness, just I'm going to do the right thing with this person, even though I'm not sure what it is. And it might just be being quiet. You are taking action to love. And God notices. And God is watching every situation we wrestle with. And He's looking for us to do the right thing in every one of them. And then we don't. We seek God's own forgiveness. And He wants us to get right back up and keep working with that person. And difficult people, you'll be working on yourself and with them all your life. And just to do it. Just to do it. We'll wrap up. I want to revisit this screen. We're just going to mention them all. Here's all your situations. If you're not sure where to start, Jay, go ahead and bring up this last one. If you want to work on your character in your car, public transportation, at home or with your family, how you are with family is how you really are. Because when you get home with family after being real nice at work, you're not going to want to be nice at home too. But how you are with the people you're at home with, at work or volunteer environments, whenever you're having to interact with others, especially if you choose to be there. Your church family, sometimes that can be problematic, with acquaintances. And I will probably add with people you have political differences with. Those are very valid differences, but treat them with love. Your online presence, there's a lot of keyboard warriors out there that will say a lot of things online, and I've had to delete a lot of stuff where I thought I had a good wise guy response to something, but it wasn't rooted in love, and I figured no one needed to hear it, but I typed it anyway because I wanted to say it, then I deleted it. And sometimes you got to do that. I've done that with emails. Maybe you have too. All of that is your character coming out and what you deal with concerning your words and your actions. We got new clothes. Let's wear them proudly. I'd rather wear these clothes. And he described earlier rage, anger, malice, all that. I don't want those old clothes back on again. I want to wear these clothes. But they're not always comfortable. But they're the clothes we want to be seen in and that God calls us to wear. So we got to keep them on and keep wearing them all the time. And may we help each other in this great journey, in this great walk. Just a moment, we're going to sing a song to encourage us to walk in the right direction, to take on this new character. We're always a work in progress. Don't ever think you're done. Don't ever give up on yourself either, because God's never done with you. This is a lifetime pursuit, but it's the only pursuit I want to be involved in, because it has eternal rewards and also temporal rewards, because relationships can be better if we work on all these things and love each other as God wants us to love them.